What's up, guys? This is Mike, your host at Road Stories. I have one humble request for you, and that's if you haven't done so already, to go over to iTunes or wherever it is that you listen to the show and write me a review. Doesn't matter if it's good or if it's bad, they all help, and I really, really would appreciate it. Once you've done that, make sure to get a screenshot of the review and send me either a DM or an email with that screenshot, and I'm going to send you a pretty awesome gated shift knob keychain. Here's how to get in touch with me. You can DM me on Instagram at rspodcast, or you can send me an email, roadstoriespodcast@gmail.com. Okay, let's get to Larry's episode.
I'm Larry Chen. I'm a car culture enthusiast. I'm a photographer. I'm a hoonigan. And I just love traveling the world, shooting anything and everything that has to do with cars and car culture.
You're Machine Gun Larry.
Yeah, I guess. It's a good way to put it.
Just the amount of work that you do and the amount of work that you put into your craft makes me really excited to talk to you, because I feel like we're spirit animals. Because we're not sleepers or anything like that.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I've done a little bit of research into you in preparation for the show. And I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm not the only crazy person in this world working as hard as I'm working.
Yeah, for sure. It's just one of those things, I guess. I mean, like, you're doing what you love. I'm doing what I love. And there's not a better way to live your life, right?
Sure.
Yeah. It's that whole recent meme, right? Living your best life. I feel like I'm definitely trying to do that every single day.
Well, you've got one hell of a, I guess in photography, it'll be a portfolio, right? Instead of a resume.
Yeah.
I guess you could say both, but we'll stick to portfolio.
Yeah, to me, it's pretty cool to have such a extensive archive of shots that I've shot over the years, but I'm always just looking forward to what's next, because for me, if I don't top the year before, in terms of like getting access to cool cars, getting to shoot cool events, and getting to do cool things, it's just that's when I feel like I'm kind of failing myself, I just push myself every single event. Every time I pick up the camera, I push myself to do better, just because I feel like that's just the only way I feel alive, really. Like, that's the only way I feel complete.
Sure.
Just to give you an example, this past weekend I was at Grid Life, which is a motorsport festival.
Yeah.
It has music, it has cars, it has a car show, it has drifting, it has time attack, it has anything and everything you would want as a car enthusiast. So it's just a gathering of the greatest car culture, I guess, I don't know how to say it, just greatest minds in car culture.
Sure.
So for example, Matt Farah was there, Tanner Faust, Chris Forsberg, Vongen Jr., Dai Yoshihara, the best drifters and some of the best drivers in the world gather, as well as like amazing musical talent. Like Killer Mike was there. He's a big car guy. And it all comes together in just one place, one weekend. And this past weekend, it was at Road Atlanta. It's a 3-day event, and I went into it hard right away. The first day was horrible for me. I just did as much as I could to go out there and shoot something different from what I normally shoot when I'm at Road Atlanta for Formula Drift. But things were just not coming together. I just couldn't get what we say, quote unquote, good stuff. I just couldn't get something that I could be proud of. So up until the I guess second day, middle of the second day, I was just having a bad weekend. I just wasn't happy until I got that first really, really good shot. And I got that first really, really good shot a very unconventional way. I was riding in my buddy's Mercedes C63, and they call them the racer chasers. And they're from race service. My buddy Andy Laputka, who I started shooting with, we've been shooting together for 14, 15 years almost. He was driving, and I was, doing the triggering for the camera that was mounted on the hood. And we were following Tanner Faust in his drift taxi.
Right, okay.
And he had 3 people in his car, and he's just hanging it out, every corner, full course drifting, like putting all that, 900 horsepower to use. And the back corner, right before the crazy front straight where you can hit 200 in some cars, he goes off like really bad, like very far off, like four tires off. But the best part is, in the C63, we follow him perfectly. Like we just don't even change course at all. So now both of us are completely off-road. and he's just spinning up dirt, grass, everything. It's the craziest thing. And I just having the time of my life, just triggering that camera. And I could see my buddy too, just trying to kind of keep that distance still. And we're just there, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like this is where it's at, like this is something different from what I normally get when I'm at Formula Drift. Mm-hmm. We pull into the pits. I look at my shots, and we just get the perfect shot of him mowing the lawn, like just spin, like going full rallycross.
Lawnmower.
Yeah, full rallycross in this crazy $300, maybe $400,000 drift car.
Jesus.
With passengers, and by the way, chasing him in a $110,000 car.
Sure.
Yeah. So it was a good moment, and from then on, it sounds really bad, but from then on, that's when I started having a good weekend.
Got it.
Yeah.
How was Tanner's weekend after that?
I think he's got to have a good weekend no matter what he does, or no matter where he goes. As long as he's behind the wheel, I feel like he's having a good time. And, like it's just so cool to see someone of that stature, like someone that's a champion, mm-hmm. just having fun and giving rides. It's just super cool.
I wanted to follow up kind of with what you said in terms of getting the right shot, like the good stuff, I guess.
Yeah, good stuff. So it's kind of a fun thing that I have with a lot of the photographers that I started with. Mm-hmm. Anytime we see each other at an event, we ask each other if we're getting good stuff.
Sure.
And because it's and the response is, "Are you getting good stuff?" And the response is, "Beautiful stuff."
Yeah.
A lot of people ask me who inspires me. And I always respond with my peers, my peers that I started with, and the ones that I'm shooting with now, or the ones that I were shooting with when I was coming up. We are the ones who are pushing each other the hardest.
Right.
Because when I see my buddy getting this awesome shot, I don't want to copy him, but I want to do something different that would potentially be better. Sure. And then in turn, he pushes himself to stay out there longer, or to stay out in the rain, or go earlier, or whatever.
Right.
Or find that different angle to get a better shot. So that's honestly the most fun thing for me, to go out to an event, to go out to a car show, or even if we're shooting the same car or whatever, to see what we come up with after the fact, because it inspires me to see, wow, I can't believe I didn't think of that angle.
Right.
I can't believe he has that kind of skill to hold the camera that steady, or whatever. I can't believe he paid this guy off to be in this lot, or be in this parking structure, or park in front of this hotel, whatever.
Right.
Whatever you need to do to get that shot, like it just that's what pushes me.
Sure.
Seeing what the other guys are doing.
Do you think that comes from your competitive kind of spirit? Because you were in motorsport before. I mean, it's not like it's a brand new story. I mean, you've been around for forever. And you started off racing cars, right? And then I guess from the stuff that I've read and the stuff that I've watched, you said that, I wasn't so good driving,
Yeah.
but I was great behind the camera, and that was your transition. It's all competitive, right?
Yeah, and it's I guess it's one of those things where like, it's one of the things where so many people are just good at certain things, and for me, I'm good at taking pictures in this way. So a lot of people can shoot food or shoot weddings or shoot, I don't know, even like portraiture,
Right,
fashion, whatever. They could do all that. Their range is so great. But for me, it's just so weird. Like I got into this, I guess, niche for car culture.
Sure.
And for some reason, it's just become so big over the years. Like I'm so glad that I can inspire all these people to pick up the camera and start shooting. In fact, a lot of these guys that I think maybe that I helped inspire, it's so cool for me to shoot with them side by side now.
Yeah.
And to me, it is a competition, but it's a friendly competition.
Sure.
And we're all kind of pushing hard to just enjoy it ourselves. At the end of the day, a lot of people ask me like, hey, so you travel the world, you go here, whatever, you go to Europe, you go to Asia. What do you bring back for a souvenir? I always just tell them like, man, I shot thousands of photos. Maybe only 100 of them are good, but I have these 100 photos that I created. I'm so proud of them. And even though if I didn't get paid for it, it's just worth so much to me to have these photos and to be able to share these with my audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very kind of intangible, tangible thing.
Yeah. It's so crazy to me. I still think it's insane that it's just a bunch of digital files.
Sure.
That can actually disappear. I mean, granted, I do a lot of print stuff. I do a lot of books and magazines, but it's still, in the end of the day, just something electronic.
Sure.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of, when Prince passed away. I'm not saying I hope he passed away.
Yeah.
But, like when Prince passed away, there were so many recordings that they found of his. And now they're like slowly releasing it. So it's like, it's kind of sort of in the same vein maybe, but follow-up question to that. I mean, you shoot literally thousands of photos per event.
Mm-hmm.
How many photos do you think you've taken over the lifetime of you doing this?
There's an actual way for me to find out the exact number, but it'll probably take a while to figure out. Actually, recently I got a identical server to the NAS server that I had to hold all my stuff. So I have this server that's 12 terabyte hard drives. So it's 144 terabytes. And that's almost full of my life's work. Yeah. So then I recently just got a duplicate of it just because I actually have 5 copies of all of my work in fire safes, in off-location backups, as well as those 2 NAS servers, just because I'm so paranoid, because really it is just a digital file.
Sure, yeah.
And I know there's a way to figure out how many photos I've taken, but I've said it quite a few times on other podcasts and other interviews. I think I take 750 photos per day, every day. But now I think it's more.
Every day?
Every single day.
Every single day you take 750
every single day.
photos.
So, for example, today I have a shoot later. I'll probably take 700 photos. But yesterday I was in Atlanta. I took 2,000, 2,500 photos. Maybe 50 of those are only the usable ones. But yeah, for me, it is a numbers game. With digital, it's so nice to be able to push the limit of, hey, there's that split second, the tiniest moment in time that you can capture. But guess what? You have to spend maybe 3-4 hours of sitting there and just shooting the same thing until that moment of time happens.
Sure.
Later today, I'm just going to shoot 3 smaller car features, and I won't be using as much time to shoot them. But same thing, I'm shooting at such a shallow plane of focus, and sometimes is such a small window in terms of like golden hour, blue hour, whatever. I have to take so many attempts at this one shot before it comes out.
Right.
Because as good as digital cameras are, and as good as lens technology is, it's still not perfect. We're just still so far from, hey, just bring up the camera to your eye, or bring up the viewfinder and click one photo and that's your photo.
Sure.
It's just not like that.
Sure.
And a lot of people, I see that I come out with these Machine Gun Larry videos where I record myself shooting these events and I'm just firing away nonstop.
Right.
People are always saying like, wow, do you really need to take that many photos of one run of Pikes Peak or whatever? And I respond with, hey, that car, you never know if it could go off the next corner.
Sure.
And you'll never see that car ever again.
Right. And even if it doesn't, it's not going to take exactly the same line. So it's always going to be a different approach, right?
Yeah. And that's one of those things where, like, if I was hired to follow this team or follow this certain car, for example, up Pikes Peak, and it has one run or two runs the whole week, what happens? Where does that money go? Like,
Sure.
I don't get the money if I don't get the shots,
Right.
And that's a good example. For example, like one of the most popular cars that went to the Hoonigan Donut Garage was Old Smoky F1,
Yeah.
which is that truck.
Yeah. Chuckles.
Chuckles. Yeah. That car or that truck was supposed to run up Pikes Peak.
Yeah.
They only got 1 day of practice in. And it was only just a few short runs because I think due to weather, they just cut that day short. But guess what? I went in there thinking, okay, I just need to get these shots. I didn't even think that if we got 6 more days of shooting that car, whatever, that would be awesome.
Sure.
That would be a bonus. But for me, just that one session of it running, the 3 or 4 runs that I saw it, I just attacked it like that was the last time I was ever going to see that car. And guess what? The block cracked or something
Right.
at the end of the day. And those were the only shots that existed of that car. So it was good that, I unleashed the machine gun on this thing. So, because at the end of the day, I came out with this whole archive or gallery of this car running up Pikes Peak, because in one run, I could get 3 or 4 usable shots.
Right. Going back to what you were saying about camera technology, I think, at least for me, and hopefully for you too, is it's kind of job security. It's good that the cameras aren't as good as, taking one shot and that's it. Because I think digital in some ways took a lot of that creativity out. Because when you were with film, you didn't have 5,000, 6,000 exposures that you could do. You only had a couple of hundred, right? What's a roll of film usually? Like how many exposures?
Yeah, you can get like 40 exposures out of it if you really try hard.
Right.
But I actually welcome the camera technology thing, and I actually think it's better that everyone gets to shoot and everyone is carrying a really nice camera with them everywhere now, on their phones. But that's really not the difficult part of this job, as you know. The difficult part is finding the cars and finding the cool stuff to be in front of.
Right.
And I've been doing these Canon workshops where I have students come and I try to help them to shoot, but the what they don't realize is I did all the hard work for them ahead of time to get them in front of the cool thing,
right?
Which is getting the cars, getting location, even having food ready. Like, just the last thing that they need to worry about is getting the cool subject. What they need to worry about is actually capturing it.
Right.
And so what's crazy is a lot of these workshops that I've been doing, some of the students would complain that I'm not actually like hands-on taking their camera and like with their hands around their camera and like showing them how to take the pictures. That's not the point. The point is I showed them, to how to get the subject. And then I'm showing them what I like about the cars and what I like in terms of like telling the story of the cars.
Sure.
And it's up to them to develop their own style to take these pictures.
Right. Yeah, well, that's what I was kind of thinking about in terms of the technology, right? Because that technology, it grants pretty much everyone to go out and take that photo. Like ever since DSLRs became affordable, like I had a Nikon D40, which was what, like $300, $400, $500 or something like that when it first came out. I mean, that's such an accessible thing to, well, not to most people, but to some people. And it's so easy for you to just go out and start taking photos of stuff, but people don't really understand the logistical problems that you could have, which you took on head on when you first started.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, in audio, for example, it's not like, just because you have a really great recording, it's going to be a great recording. Like if it has no soul, it just doesn't have soul. You could have the most perfect, most honest digital recording you could possibly have, but if the song sucks, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I guess in some ways, we're talking the same language, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. It really is one of those things where I always say this: you can't get good pictures when you're sitting on your couch, and I'm sure it's the same way with music. You just can't have good music if you can't play a good song.
Sure.
Or if it's not actually good, if it actually doesn't have soul.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just hope I can inspire some people to go out there and take pictures.
I think you've done that. I think you've done that a lot, actually. Yeah. I think there's more kids with their phones and their cameras than ever before because, again, it's becoming more accessible because you have it on your phone. And these cameras are pretty damn great.
Yeah. No, as you should. For me, to make a point, when I started my Instagram, I shot photos only on my phone, and I posted only phone photos until I got to 100,000 followers. From then on, it was a free-for-all, and I posted whatever. But I just kind of wanted to make a point that, hey, you don't actually need the latest and greatest camera to take pictures.
So I want to talk to you about the beginning of the journey because it's pretty well known that you started with the whole car thing. You were racing and then you transitioned into the photo stuff. But I want to talk more about finding your eye, because in music it's like finding your voice, right? You did almost everything, it sounds like, just to get to that point. Because you were for years and years and years self-funding, traveling the world, getting in front of people, getting in front of cars. How did you find what you were looking for? And if you have found what you were looking for, if not, what are you doing to still look for that thing, whatever that thing is behind the lens of the camera?
Yeah, that's one of those things that a lot of people don't see, a lot of people don't see the struggle that I went through to get to this point.
Right.
And the nice thing is there's a lot of these guys that I started with and that I'm still friends with that were there with me when we all started to try to get into this industry. People don't realize that there was one point where I was helping to drive these race cars across country just to get to these events. So like I would help my buddies trailer their cars to Formula Drift events because I couldn't afford a plane ticket to go to these events. And plus they would let me sleep on the floor of their hotels.
Sure.
Because I couldn't afford to get hotel rooms.
Yeah.
And there was one point where I was like, I just looked at myself and like, I can't afford my mortgage for the month, and I'm traveling the world still shooting. Like, what do I do to make money? And that's actually when I started doing paparazzi to fund this crazy passion. So I that's the only way I could afford to travel to Japan, to Europe, and to all across the US to follow this racing and car culture in general, was if I worked really, really hard back at home to make money. It's just one of those things that a lot of people don't realize. Now it's so much easier, I feel like, because of social media. Like, if you're actually truly talented, there's just so many things to do in this industry. But of course, another thing is you have to have the drive.
Of course.
And you have to have the work ethic.
Yeah, I think it starts with that.
Yeah. Because you can actually honestly learn how to take a picture it's really hard to learn how to have good work ethic.
Sure.
Yeah. But I mean, there's so many stories. Like, for example, when I first went to the SEMA show, or the first couple of years, I would sleep on floors. But there was one year particularly where I had to sleep on a different floor every single night. Because it's like, hey, floor space was actually a commodity too back then.
Wow.
It's like, hey, I got my buddy coming in tomorrow, but you can sleep on my hotel room floor tonight, and so on, you know. And I did that one year where it was a different floor every single night. And it was tough, you know, but that's what I was there. I was at the event. I was taking pictures. I was having a good time. And, you know, that was the dream back then. Now I'm so lucky that I get to work with manufacturers, with the biggest aftermarket companies, and cover these events and cover these shows properly.
Why risk losing your house, sleeping on floors?
Yeah.
You know, bumming pretty much everything, it sounds like.
Yeah, so I feel like that I can relate to Vonnegut Jr. in that way. He was actually working as an IT guy while he was drifting and while he was following the Formula Drift series. And then there was one point where he would go open or he would tow his car on an open trailer to these events, and then he would sometimes take a red eye back Sunday night and like land a couple hours before he had to go to work. And he would do his IT job.
Sure.
And then he would go back to drifting, whatever, doing motorsports on the weekend. It totally, like, I totally relate to him on that, you know, because there was one point where he had to just quit and just go full time on his car job or his car journey. And I had to do the same thing.
I think everybody experiences burnout at some point in their life, regardless of how much you love or maybe don't love your work. You know, for you, I think it's maybe less of a problem because you're so passionate about what you do, but I'm sure there have been instances where burnout just hits you. And it may not kind of come to fruition as something like the weekend at Grid Life, right? Where your first 2 days are like, I can't believe I'm not getting that shot.
Yeah.
But eventually you've got to experience some of that. And how do you bounce back? Because maybe at a certain point you come to this kind of crisis and you go, what am I doing this for?
That happens to me every now and then in different shapes or forms. Like, for example, sometimes I'm put in a position where I have to get these photos, I have to perform, but the situation is just not allowing for that.
Right.
And that's when I get really stressed out. For example, I think the worst of that is shooting events like X Games, where it's so controlled by someone like ESPN or another event like that, where they just don't allow you to take pictures.
Yeah.
You know, you have to go out of your way to do some shady stuff just to do your job.
Sure.
You know, and it's funny because I have this conversation with my friends. Like we reminisce about this all the time. There was one point where X Games was happening in downtown LA, and that was when Tanner Faust and Greg Tracy, they were doing like the Hot Wheels double loop.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And I was deathly ill. I had the flu, and I was at the peak of my flu, trying to cover this event. And I was hired by Dodge at that time to cover Travis Pastrana. So I knew I had to perform no matter what. You know, there's no sick days in my line of work. And I just could barely walk. But I was presented with this problem where they just wouldn't let us go anywhere. You know, and even the spectators had better access than the photographers. And it was me, my friends that I was shooting with, they experienced the same problem. I remember my friend Allison, she would seriously try to hide at this LA city bus stop. Like she would hide in the bus stop. So when the race started, she would be able, like, if no one spotted her, she would be able to pop her head up and like get some shots.
That's insane.
But they actually spotted her. And I would have to do like things like if there was a security guard there and I was behind a fence, when he turned his head, I would be able to move the fence 1 foot closer and 1 foot closer. And pretty soon I was standing next to the security guard, And then, I mean, it was the craziest thing, the most stressful thing. And I definitely questioned myself at that event. Like, what am I doing? Like, why am I even doing this? Like, why am I physically suffering for this job? And my buddy, Matt Johnston, we always talk about this and we always laugh about it. He almost got arrested at that event because he was somewhere where he wasn't supposed to be, like at the bus stop or whatever. And then the security guard's like, hey, you got to move. He didn't move because he needed to get the shot. If he didn't get the shot, he wouldn't get paid. And then LAPD spotted him.
Oh, okay.
LAPD spotted him, pointed him out and said, hey, come here. Like, you're getting arrested because you're trespassing. And then so my buddy, he turns around, he runs into the crowd and he runs away from the cops. No joke. To this day, him and I laugh about it all the time because it was seriously like playing like a video game, like Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah.
Like, you have to hide. You have to actually camouflage yourself to do your job. And there was one point, there was this pedestrian crossing, and there was this great shot from this pedestrian crossing where you could get all the rallycross cars launching at the same time.
Okay.
And then the security guard's like, hey, you can't shoot from there. And then he's like, this is just for crossing. So what I did was I would just cross so slow and I would just cross back and forth until I could hear the rally cars going off the rev limiters ready to launch.
Yeah.
And then I just stuck my monopod out with the camera, and as the security guards are running to get me, like I would time it perfectly. So I would raise my monopod, the cars would launch, and I would get my pictures, and then I would just run away. It was just the most amazing event.
Nuts.
Like, there was even one point where I was hiding behind a trash can, and I would have to turn my body based on where the security guard was, so I would be hidden by this trash can.
That's insane.
To get this shot, yeah.
That's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And they expect you to do that.
Well, no, that's the thing is they don't want you to get the shots, because it's very TV focused. And as journalists, we're just supposed to take 3 or 4 pictures for our newspaper, and that's it. But
that's insane.
When we're hired, for example, my buddy was working for Ford.
Mm-hmm.
I was working for Dodge, and my other friend was working for whatever, it was a big manufacturer.
Okay.
Because they want to show their athlete or their car in all these different scenarios. And they want to have something to show for all the millions of dollars they put in this program.
Sure.
And that's what we're there to capture for them.
Sure.
Video and stills.
Yeah.
And the event they just made it as difficult as possible for us.
That's insane. Yeah.
Oh, and that's not even the kicker.
Okay.
The worst part is they made us wear motocross body armor.
Okay.
Because they were afraid that the gravel that the cars kick up would take out our heart or something. Well, I think that was more for insurance purposes, but they made us,
coming from the insurance business. Yeah,
they made us all wear motocross armor, and to this day, I still have that armor in my house.
Nice. Do you use it for any other events? No, okay.
Just for X Games.
So that was the most treacherous one.
To my memory, that was the worst one.
Yeah.
On top of that, you have to remember I had 103-degree fever.
Yeah.
And dealing with that in the LA heat.
Oh, that's delightful. Yeah.
It really was a point where I looked at myself and I'm like, why would I put myself through this literal torture?
Sure.
It may sound fun and it's a fun story now, but at that time, heck, I could have passed out.
For sure.
From exhaustion or whatever.
That crazy story makes me want to go into the Canon Workshops. And you mentioned something about the frustrations of the students. And it sounds like to me, it's not like it's just going to a pretty spot, holding the camera up, pressing the button and getting that super great exposure. It's so much more than that.
It's tough because while I wish I could teach these people more in terms of technique or whatever, but I feel like it's just something that it's wrong for me to almost just show them the exact settings and exact composition that I would use, because
Sure.
what does that, how does that make it their photo?
Right. Exactly.
What it makes it their photo is if I give them the nice car during the right light, in the right setting, with the right background, and they decide themselves to frame it up this way,
Right.
that's their photo. And that's something that they should be proud of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk more about that feeling, because when you're using someone's equipment and they pay attention to you and they go, hey, we would like for you to be the professional, the person teaching our equipment to other people, I'm sure there's a certain feeling associated with that, with getting that phone call, that email, however it is that they contacted you. So how did it feel to get that whatever form of communication from Canon and be the guy that's representing not only yourself, but the largest camera company in the world?
I really like being in that position where I can be that guy. They could have reached out to anyone.
Sure.
They could have reached out to the hundreds of other very well-known photographers, car photographers. And there's just so many other guys that are probably better at teaching than I am. But I'm just glad that they reached out to me, just because I'm not trying to make a quick buck from this. I don't make money from this. In fact, I put so much time and effort to make sure the students have a good time and have a good experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a way for me to give back.
I want to go back to that first camera. You said that you started with Canon, right? What was it, like a Rebel XTI or something like that?
So I started shooting first on film.
Okay. That's ballsy.
Right. Well,
that's very ballsy.
I mean, I didn't really, I did shoot car things on film, but that was so early. Parking lot meet days.
Yeah.
That was like when I first started taking pictures. In high school, I was shooting film. But the earliest digital cameras were coming out at that time, and they were like 2-3 megapixels.
Yeah, I remember those days.
One of the, I had a camera that I was using a lot. It was a Canon S50, I think. That was, or no, a Canon S40 was a 4 megapixel camera that I thought, wow, this is it. Like, this is some crazy technology, it's like 4 megapixels now, and pretty soon it'll surpass the quality of film. And I still have my Nikon film camera that I started with back then, a Nikon FG.
Cool.
And yeah, it was just fun for me. I was just taking pictures of my friends' cars. I was taking pictures of car meets that we would go on, and I would post them on the forums, and people would like them, people would compliment them, and it was just a hobby back then.
Sure.
And then eventually, I just took that step to get that Canon Rebel XTI. I spent $1,000 on it, and that, up until that point, that was my biggest purchase ever on camera equipment. And all my friends were like, "Oh man, they got you so good! They upsold you on this camera." But it blew my mind, the jump from 4 or 5 megapixels to 8 megapixels. Like, I could not believe the quality of this camera.
Yeah.
And I looked back at the photos that I took on that camera, which I still have. Or I don't have the camera anymore, but I still have the photos. I look at it, I'm like, oh man, I can't believe I made these photos with this camera. Like it pushed me so far in this car culture world. I had it for so many years before I could afford a better camera.
That's great. I mean, the thing is, maybe the nostalgia of film is that camera body, that digital camera body. It's like once it's surpassed X amount of shutters, it's like, I don't know, it's almost like a disposable item. Whereas with a film camera, it could go forever.
Yeah, I have quite the film camera collection now, which I still use every single camera. And for me, that's like a time to relax. Like I shoot photos of family, I shoot photos of my kids with my film cameras, and it's just so fun to play with them. And they're just so mechanical, and I relate them to watches. I told Matt Farah this, like it is like a watch, because a lot of these things, they don't take batteries. You wind them up and they work,
right?
And they're mechanical. And the only thing that's electronic, in a lot of these old film cameras, were just the light meter. And a lot of times you don't need the light meter. So you can go out and shoot a whole full roll of film without using the light meter, and it's just fully mechanical. And I think that's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just exactly what you said. New cameras are disposable, and they'll eventually, just like new cars.
Sure.
They'll never become, most of these cars will never become classic. But these all metal body film cameras that are fully mechanical will last forever.
When Jonathan Ward was here and we were talking about kind of sort of the same thing, it's like, I have a Civic Si, right? And it's got the whole digital display thing and the touchscreen and whatnot.
Yeah.
What happens when that dies?
Yeah.
It's just a blank screen there. You can't replace it with anything.
Yeah.
It's just kind of just a bit of whatever. It's this piece of plastic that's there now, reminding you of what was there before, which was just a bunch of megapixels and, a computer running it.
Right. That's such a good point. I mean, eventually those are going to run out. Like I'm sure there's going to be new old stock of that digital dash for a long time.
Sure.
Or you could salvage other cars with that dash, but eventually it's going to run out. Whereas a lot of these mechanical things, you can reproduce them.
For sure. Yeah.
Which is just, I guess, a turning point. There's never going to be another 32 Ford. 32 Ford is always going to be a 32 Ford.
Of course.
Forever.
Of course.
And it's such a cool thing that like that year of car, whatever, it's special in a way.
I wanted to ask you a question about those somber moments, because being behind the camera and being exposed to so much motorsport, I'm sure you've seen more than a handful, as you've said, of things that did not go the right way and people got hurt. So how is it that you're able to kind of continue on? Because I would say, 50%, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong here, but 50% it sounds like to me is creativity, right? It's obviously doing the legwork, and the second portion of that is actually developing that eye and having that eye, which is what you've been working all your life to do. But, if someone is taking a turn in front of you and something happens, where it be a mechanical failure or human error, and that person gets injured, or, hopefully they don't, but they may pass. How do you get past that moment? Because in 90% of the events that I've seen, the race goes on or the event goes on, because that's just the risk that's associated with motorsport, and people know that.
Yeah, it's really tough for everyone, but it's tough for me because I actually do have photos of these guys. I have the last photos of so-and-so, or I have photos of these people that have moved on, and it's tough, but it's my job. It's my job to be out there to record motorsport history and record car culture for future generations and for other people outside of this small circle, who actually gets to experience it firsthand.
Sure.
I feel like, on the highs and the lows, like I'm there to do that. Like, for example, this past time at Pikes Peak, this guy went off just like 20, 30 feet away from me. And I put that in my bonus video on Hoonigan. I didn't stop shooting, but as I was shooting, I was yelling like, hey, are you okay? Like, is everything good? But like, I was still shooting at the same time because I wanted to make sure he was good. I wanted to make sure I didn't have to get on the radio and call, race control right away to tell him that he's hurt. But I was still shooting, and I didn't stop shooting. And you can hear the clicks keep going and going and going, while I'm doing it. Because, I mean, how often is that moment going to happen? It just happens, and you have that split second to be able to capture it. And luckily, I was in the right place at the right time to capture it. If I let it fly by, I'll take it personally. I'll be so angry at myself that I didn't shoot, because it really is my job. I take it so personally,
right, to
increase my chances of getting that shot, being in that right place, right time.
Right.
I actually don't want to get the crash shots. I'm not proud of that. You know, like I'm not proud of showing off that kind of stuff. I want to get better storytelling shots, or more beautiful shots.
Yeah. But the crash is a part of the story. So
yeah, it really is.
Yeah. You know, and again, it comes with the territory. You know, when you're racing, you will crash. I think we've all been there. You know,
yeah, for sure.
You were talking about driving home with a broken drive shaft.
Yeah.
It's just a fact of life when you're involved with something like this.
For sure.
It almost seems like drifting is your home. And I think you've even said that.
Yeah. Drifting and Formula Drift especially is my home, just because they've really let me shine there in terms of like giving me the access and taking me to these events worldwide and just allowing me to know all these people in the industry. Like they really welcomed me with open arms. Whereas you got so many older motorsports that have been going on for decades that it's like an old boys club. You know, you just can't get in.
Yeah.
Whereas I got into FD early enough on their third year of actually being a series where I was a nobody, but they treated me just like whatever, AP or Reuters or whatever, big time journalist.
Sure.
And that's where I built my reputation and name up. And that's where I made all my friends. And now it's seriously the best time. Every single time I go to Formula Drift paddock, I'm so lucky to be able to know all these people, you know, because when I grew, everyone else grew too. And from what it was back then, it was like just this new motorsports.
Yeah,
you know?
Now, it totally was.
It's become this mainstream thing where sometimes you can't even get a ticket if you wanted to because it's so popular. And it's in everything, you know, it's in advertisements for major auto manufacturers, and it's like in movies, and you know, it's like this normal thing that people do now. You know, it's just like I always say, it's like professional arm wrestling. It's like something that you assume that exists,
right?
But you don't think that somebody would take it that seriously. It's just like, you know, ripping donuts in a parking lot, whatever.
For sure.
But they've taken it to this next level where it's just so crazy that it's just super cool. It really is.
So I'd like to thank you for coming out here and taking the time out to talk to me about everything that you do, which is a lot. You do a lot.
Well, thanks for having me.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I think one of the most exciting things was when you responded and you're like, yeah, I'll come on the show. Because me being someone who's just starting out and knowing about the history that you have and how you got started, it's like, okay, cool. He's still a cool guy. He's still down to earth.
Thank you so much for having me. I always say it's like one of those things where the one-on-one interaction with anyone is just so important. Like when I'm at an event or when I'm out shooting car shows, whenever someone wants to talk to me about cars or photography or whatever, I always try to spend as much time as possible, just because you never know. You know, this guy might be the one that I'm shooting next to 2-3 years down the line. Maybe he'll get me a job.
Yeah.
You know, maybe he'll be some PR guy or some producer or whatever. You never know.
For sure.
Or he could just be my friend. You know, we could just shoot the shit together and just be car buddies.
Definitely.
It's just one of those things. Like, I always say, the world would be a great place if it was run by car people. You know?
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from.
So, because we always, no matter what, like any kind of event that I go to or shops that I visit, I could relate to these people. And because if they love their craft that much, I should take a second look at it, and I should take a look at it from their shoes, because heck, I could fall in love with that thing too, you know, whether it be donks or lowriders.
That's a good one.
Dragsters or drifters, whatever, you know, there's just so many things like they're passionate about, and I just kind of have to, you know, shoot it and record it. You know?
Larry, this was one hell of a conversation. I would like to take this opportunity to give you an opportunity to let people know where they can find you. And if they don't know about you, they need to know about you. So make sure to let them know where to find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Larry Chen. I pretty sure that there's not that many Larry Chens. So you can find me at my website, larrychenphoto.com. And you can find me posting up videos, on the Hoonigan YouTube channel.
Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank my family and my wife, especially for being so understanding. She takes care of the kids. She takes care of me. She takes care of everything. So
Sounds like you got a good one.
Yeah, if I didn't have her, I wouldn't be able to do this job for sure.
Cheers to that.
For sure.
All right, Larry. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.